can you describe your first sexual awakening and what a sexual awakening is? So take us a little bit to like who you were when you were younger, what that sexual awakening looked like, and then I'd love for us to share with everyone, how can you have a sexual awakening? What contributes to that?
Yeah. Okay. So my background, I have some sexual trauma when I was younger. That led into childhood depression and eating disorders and a lot of anxiety. I dissociated a lot as a tool to cope, and relationships would last about 2 weeks, and then I would have a panic attack, and then I would break up with them. And that happened, through my teens into college, and I was excellent at like drawing people in, but then I would stop it and then push away. So that's my background there. And then I was 21 when I was reading Red Book magazine, and they quoted a sex therapist. And I decided that that's what I wanted to be, even though I had never had sex before, even though it terrified me. And I still had this mentality that, sex, there's something shameful around it. So that's when I decided, and I went to grad school to become a doctor in this. And I read all the information that I could about how penises worked, and I would bring it up in conversation, just to help me manage the anxiety inside of myself. First time I had sex, I was 23 with my boyfriend, who did not know that I had never had sex. And I had this experience of, if you think of the first time that you had sex, like it was just like, oh, that's it. It's like a sense of fullness, but then, it's all sensationalized and everything. So I had this experience of like, okay, that's interesting. And afterward, I was like, okay, there's got to be more to this. Like, I don't know. Like everybody, been saying is this cool thing. But then he broke up with me because he didn't feel like we were sexually compatible. But after that, I just went on a bender, and I was just having sex with multiple people and feeling more of this, allowing, it was really other people that were showing me how sex was. And I was like, okay, just like moving my own body. But the first time somebody bit me, I was like, what? Oh, I like that, And so it had these little sexual awakenings. And then I was, studying Tantra, but I wasn't fully embodying it. It was more of the white Tantra, more of the chanting, more of the breath practices. But again, I could not drop down into my pussy, into my pelvic floor. And then I was 24, 25 when I was studying to be a sex therapist, and they took us to a dungeon. And a dungeon is a public play space for BDSM. And the master dominant was there, and he was demoing, and I volunteered my little hand, and I was like, oh, pick me, So he was using these toys and these tools on me, and then like grabbing me, and I was like, oh my God, I like feel tingly inside. And then at the end of the night, he comes up to me and he goes, when do you want to have your practice, or when do you want to have your scene? And he had demoed with a bunch of people in the space. And so I went up there, and we went through a whole scene. And it was, and I don't recommend people who are new to this to do as much as I did, because that can bring up a lot. It can be emotionally dangerous. And I know that now in retrospect, but in the moment, I was just letting him guide me, right? And so he tied me up, and he used electric toys, and he used floggers, and he used, all these different practices. And my whole body let go, and I was like honey, just like this liquid on the St. Andrew's cross. And I was orgasming like I had never experienced before. And I was in this incredible trance state that was psychedelic. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? What does this feel so good? And
Can you tell us what a St. Andrew's cross is, just so everyone gets the benefit of knowing what was happening?
Yes, except now I'm really turned on. No, I'm kidding. But really. So a St. Andrew's cross is a cross, but it's like an X. So it's a giant X that you will tie somebody to, you will link cuffs to so that they're in place. And it's used so that they can hold them in place so that you can do a scene on. So whether it's impact play with floggers or or even just a practice of, so it's restraint. You can't get away. Negotiated. And so that, I remember leaving there and feeling in a daze of like, what just happened? What did I just experience? And then after that, I became so hungry for BDSM. I was obsessed with it. I wanted to think about it all the time. I researched it all the time. I read about it. I went to events, and it was this eye-opening self-recognition, just empowerment. I had never been in lingerie, so walking around in this dungeon in lingerie was an edge for me.
Hard to imagine that now.
I know. Now I'm a queen
Cat
of lingerie.
could live in lingerie, like it feels like you were born in lingerie. You know, like you just popped out, like in fucking bordel or whatever.
Yeah. But being in that space, in this dungeon where so many people of different sizes, different body shapes, different, walks of life, were all there celebrating their sexuality. There were people being walked around on leashes. There were people in full lingerie or naked. There were people who were orgasming in the room full of everyone. And this is like, again, reference point of this image of people fully embodying themselves, and they weren't necessarily, the socially constructed idea of what, attractive is in our culture. And yet they're so attractive because they're in their body and in their expression, and they're owning it. And that, created this ethos of full expression. And we get that in the Tantra community too. It's like you heal when you become whole. And similar in this dynamic, and I see so many similarities between the two of them, is you find wholeness because you allow yourself and you claim yourself and you explore and you discover who you are and what you like.
So I think I'd never thought about this before, but like a sexual awakening, right? Because we use this word, it's like a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
So a spiritual awakening, you suddenly get more connected to spirituality somehow.
Yeah.
And you might experience what we would consider spiritual phenomenon. So like getting in touch with your intuition, having energy activation. And you want to like do more spiritual practice usually, right? So there's something that like knocks a spiritual awakening. Sometimes it's spontaneous. Sometimes it's that you go and do a meditation retreat. Sometimes you have a new lover or friend or partner who's like super spiritual. Sometimes like for whatever reason your energy activates and it makes you want to do like all these things. But at the heart of it is like, wow, there's this energy opening and I'm going deeper into a truth, into a part of myself. And so it's like the same thing is possible for us in sex. It's like all of a sudden we have more sexual energy. We have more sexual aliveness, and we're more in touch with how vast and beautiful sexuality can be. And we want to explore. We want to know more. We want to do the practice. We want to engage. And that could be 20 years into a marriage, you have a sexual awakening. It could be when you get a divorce, you have a sexual awakening. It could be when you're 23 years old, you have a sexual awakening. It could be someone ties you to St. Andrew's Cross and you're like, wasn't having a sexual awakening before, but I sure as fuck am now, right? All of these pieces. Even me, I would say sexual awakenings in my life happen when I first went to Tantra school and started my first tantric sexual practices. I would say I had a sexual awakening when I had my first boyfriend where we did Kundalini activation practices together. So we were making love with like deeper energy activation. I had a sexual awakening when Andrew wanted to explore threesomes. And at first I was like, oh, fuck no. And then I was like, wait, maybe I do want to make love to hot women. And then that actually snapped open a huge world of sexual awakening. I had had a sexual awakening when I was with Andrew and fell in love with another man and started to explore possibilities of, what could a life of polyamory look like? What could more expansion look like? Or even if I never touch this man and stay fully monogamous with Andrew, what can I do with this eros, right? Can this eros be a sexual awakening with or without this other person?